The new fusion is confirmed. Thor's kit is revealed. Will he be a beast, a must-have fusion, or a total flop? Let's dive in and find out. What's going on, guys? Blazin here. Welcome back to the channel, and thanks for joining me on another Raid Shadow Legends video. So the Thor fusion is coming next Thursday, and he's got an interesting kit, right? He's I don't know. I feel like there's a couple of things we could change up on him, but let's go through the kit. Let's dive in, and then you guys can let me know in the comments down below, is he going to be worth it for us to do? So with the A1, attacks one enemy 2 times, has a 20% chance of repeating the attack. Each hit decreases the target's turn meter by 10%. He's going to do a double hit, right? And then he's going to be able to repeat that attack. So I guess you got a 20% chance to maybe get a 4-hitter. So it's a little interesting. The decreased turn meter part is going to require accuracy in this build. So it's going to be a little difficult for us to try to build a nuker with a good amount of accuracy, right? Most endgame builds can do it, but early on builds, you know, early game, mid game, it's going to be a little tough. The A2 attacks all enemies. After hitting the first enemy, will hit every other enemy in a random order following the initial hit. Each subsequent hit increases the damage by 25%, stacking up to 100. This is going to ignore block damage and unkillable. This does not work against bosses. The second part, the ignoring the unkillable and the block damage, isn't going to work against bosses, but the first part will work against the Hydra, right? Overall, it's lacking something, right? Well, maybe not lacking something, but I just don't like the randomness, right? Because if you're using him in arena, which is kind of what he's built for, if they've got stone skin on the target, granted you could pick the first target you attack, you're not going to be able to pick the next couple of targets, so it might land on somebody who has stone skin. So the A3 is supposed to be his big juicy hit, right? Attacks all enemies before attacking, gives himself an increased attack and an increased crit damage for 2 turns, has a 75% chance, books up to 100, of decreasing the resistance of each enemy by 10%, stacking up to 50. So this part does not need accuracy. It has been confirmed by Plarium that it's just going to happen. And then gives us a nice little boost, right, to the skill with a 100% chance of placing a decreased speed for 2 turns. Again, needing the accuracy, it's going to be a little hard trying to build him with enough accuracy and being able to do some damage, right? As for the passive, every time this champion deals damage, increases thunder counter by 1. So this is a brand new buff that he's getting, right? Stacks up to 10 times. Each thunder stack increases this champion's crit damage by 3, stacks up to 30%. Once the thunder counter reaches 10, attack all enemies and place a stun debuff for 1 turn. After the attack, the thunder counter resets to 0. Now with this, again, you are going to require accuracy. But the part with this that's a little interesting is it's going to count things like Phantom Touch, War Master procs, anything that's extra damage, right? From masteries or from any blessings you might have, or even gear sets. So it's going to be a little tricky trying to keep track of this new counter form, right? They're doing a lot of things like the Rathalos one. That was kind of interesting. And as for the aura, it's a 30% in all battles. Pretty solid, actually. I like all battles. It's actually that's probably the best part about his kit. All right, so let's talk about early game. Is this guy going to be good for your account? Now, with the A1 being able to repeat the attack, that's not bad. You're gonna get a little extra damage boost whether you're using him in Hydra or arena wise. Probably not going to use the A1 quite a lot, but the sucky part is the Dookie's turn meter. So I don't think it's going to be huge. I think I would rate it close to like a 3 out of 5, but I don't think it's going to be game changing for an early game account. The A2, being able to go through block damage and unkillable, most of the players are going to be usually in like Gold 1, Gold 2 arena. There's not a lot of stone skin there yet, unless it's an account that's been well developed and has just dropped. So I think you'll find some uses for it there. It's going to be pretty solid. The one thing I do want to mention, champions like Siegfried aren't getting countered by this because you still have to have a nuker that comes in prior to Thor to be able to proc the unkillable and then hit. So maybe if it was a double hitter, that could work. Now for the A3, being able to give yourself a self buff, trying to boost that damage is actually quite great. So I think this is going to be working out pretty well for you. I wouldn't really worry about building the accuracy as an early game. I'd say the hell with it, just use them as a full-on nuker. All right, so let's go into now a mid-game scenario. Mid-game, he starts getting a little more value because we can start focusing on completing those faction wars, right? Trying to get into Hydra, trying to work into like normal hard Hydra. This is where he's going to come in, and he's going to be actually pretty good. He is all AoEs on the A2 and the A3, so that's going to work out beneficially for your account. The only drawback I have, again, is that we need the accuracy to be able to use the rest of his skill kit. Being able to decrease the resistance on the A3 on the Hydra heads is actually quite good, because you are going to find yourself trying to make those builds, and where are you gonna sacrifice? Are you gonna sacrifice on the resistance, or are you gonna sacrifice on the accuracy, not being able to land every debuff? So coming in with that decreased resistance on the A3 for a mid-game account, this is actually pretty solid. And then the only thing I'm concerned about is using him in Hydra. Is the thunder counter something that might be stolen from him? Is it going to be protected? We don't know yet. That's something that I will ask. I hope that it's protected. So let's talk about late game, end game. Let's talk about accounts that are developed, doing a 1 key, clears basically everything, isn't doing stupid damage like my account is, but is able to get everything done. Is he going to do something crazy for your account? Honestly, I don't think so. I think he's going to be the I need to collect them all type thing, because he doesn't give us anything crazy. Now, granted, the multipliers aren't revealed, and so I should say all of this is up in the air until we get the multipliers. But I feel like in an endgame account, he might get used a little bit, but it's not like I'm gonna worry about I need to use him in my Hydra team. He's not going to provide a whole bunch of stuff. Yes, he's going to give me a pretty decent AoE attack on the A2 and the A3, but I have other champions on the account that are going to be able to use, that are going to fit better in that role, right? Rather than Thor. Arena-wise, I could play around and have some fun with him, but he's not going to become a main nuker. Let's talk about the skill kit. What would I change? What would be better that would make him, useful for all the way from early into the end game? For the A1, decreasing the turn meter by 10%, I think that's not bad. I mean, granted, most end game accounts have enough to be able to build like the 350 accuracy into the build. So I think the A1 is pretty decent. Again, based on when we get the multipliers, if they're good, I'm happy with the A1. The A2, this is where I feel like it could be a little different, right? So it could be a double hitter with the second one having the damage boosted by 20% or 25%, whatever, maybe even 50, and then ignoring block damage and unkillable then, or instead of ignoring the block damage and unkillable, maybe just ignoring stone skin. I feel like that would be a little bit better, just because we don't use a lot of block damage and unkillables in Arena. Most of it is stone skin. So I feel like ignoring the stone skin would have been a pretty good idea, and it would have been a lot better than what they currently have, especially if they're going to leave the skill kit as it is, where the damage becomes higher and higher as it moves on. Now, as for the A3, I feel like this one's actually not in a bad spot, but the one thing I would like to change is I don't want to have to build the accuracy for him, right? What if the decreased speed was actually just on bosses guaranteed, right? Instead of just having a 75% chance of placing it any time, how about we do it just on a boss? Doesn't have to be put on anywhere else, but it's guaranteed to land on a boss. I feel like that would be pretty strong. And then I could actually make a really good argument to putting him in my Hydra team, because he's going to have 2 nukes and a decreased speed with the decreased resistance. That's actually going to be pretty good. I feel at that point, the A3 becomes superb, and he would be actually changing some teams. Moving on to the passive, it's going to be a little interesting to see how it works. I will look at some of the playtesting that the tier 3 creators are doing, but the Thunder counter, what I'm concerned about is, will it be stolen? Will it be a buff that appears that can be stolen from us in Hydra? If not, that's good. If it can, that's a problem, because imagine giving the head of Mischief 30% crit damage on top of what it has, and then it's spreading it, and then it stuns you, right? I hope not. Now, this is basically a PvP. It does nothing for you in Hydra or Clan Boss or anything else like that, so it's strictly for wave mobs and PvP. Overall, I'd say I'd give it like a... I want to say closer to like a 2.5, right? It's got some utility for some of the accounts to be able to use some wave control, maybe build a little bit of extra damage, put out a stun. It's going to be very tricky to keep count of it based on the masteries, based on the blessings and everything else that we have that could do some extra damage, like Lightning Orb. So what would I change for this? I guess I would say, instead of the crit damage, give him an extra 30% attack that just stacks up, right? Don't worry about the stun. Just let him stack up an extra 30% attack on him. And I think that's actually pretty solid. I don't want to... The randomness of being... Because when we use him in Hydra, once that 10 stack comes up, then he loses it. We got to rebuild it. I feel like if we just had a flat 10%, or I'm sorry, flat 30% increase attack on him, I think that would be way better than what we currently have. That's it, guys. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think? Will you be going for this fusion? Is he worth the resources and what we're gonna have to do? He is going to be a hybrid fusion, so it's gonna be a lot more difficult. You're gonna need a lot more pots. You're gonna need a lot more chickens. Before we start getting too invested in we are doing this fusion, is he gonna be worth it? Let me know again in the comments down below. And if you guys got some time, make sure to come by on Sunday for the Knights of Teleria podcast, 2 p.m. EST, where we talk everything Raid Shadow Legends. We talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. We're definitely going to be talking about this guy this week. He's going to be the new hot topic, and I'm interested to see what the rest of the guys are going to have to say. As always, guys, much love, much appreciation. Be safe, be well, be good to each other, and I'll catch you guys next time.